All right, so I'm gonna choose a few different topics, and wherever it is you're watching this from, I want you to say what comes to mind when I say these phrases. And so I'll give you an example. So I'll say best French fries, and then in your mind you're gonna name the best French fries. So you might say McDonald's, you may say Wendy's, you might say poutine, or something else. Okay, that's an example. Here we go. I say best sneaker brand. Go. Okay. I say best Netflix show to binge. Go. All right. I say must-have app on your phone. Go. Now here's the deal. Your answers to those phrases right there were likely different than the answers of others watching this video, right? The point is, on any topic, no matter how important or unimportant, different people are going to have a bunch of different ideas about it. And the same can be said about sex. The past few weeks, we've been talking about sex and how there's a lot more to the story than we may have originally thought, right? We hear and we see a bunch of, things about sex from different people, like friends and celebrities, or even parents or pastors. And we also hear about it in a lot of different places. So music or movies, anime, TV, pornography, TikTok, Snapchat, health class, and even church. And obviously, with all of those voices in the mix, there are going to be some different opinions about what's good, what's not, and what's best for you. But here's the thing. When it comes to conversations about sex, one of the biggest problems is all of those opinions come with expectations. And here's what I mean. First, there's the expectation to do more, say more, and be more. And this complicates the story. And so think about it. There's pressure to feel more casual about hookups. There's pressure to send pictures and texts. There's pressure to pass along pictures that were sent to you. There's pressure out there to experiment. There's pressure to do what your partner wants. There's pressure to know everything possible about sex, whether or not you're sexually active. And at the same time, there are other voices talking about consent and respecting other people's bodies and boundaries, which is super important, right? And then, if you've hung out around church or around Christians, there are even more voices with more opinions and more expectations. And so it might even feel like there's added pressure to do less, right? And so there's pressure to not go too far. There's pressure to not even think too far. There's pressure to honor God by honoring other people's bodies. There's pressure to not have sex until marriage. And now hear me out. I am in no way saying that those things that I just listed in the Christian realm are bad or wrong. In fact, I'd say that they're beneficial. But what I am saying is that when you have a topic where different voices are saying different things, and have different expectations for your life, that can feel like you just can't win. Right? No matter whether you decide to do more or do less sexually, somebody's going to think it's weird. Somebody's going to think it's wrong. Somebody's going to act like somebody else is convincing you to make a choice that's bad for you. So how do we make decisions for our life in our life story when everyone out there seems to disagree on what that should be? It's a really good question, and it's actually one that humans have been asking for a really long time. Here is the answer. We look to Jesus. One of the books in the Bible, in a section of books called the Gospels, which just means good news, was written by a guy named John, who was one of Jesus' 12 closest friends. He knew Jesus because they literally hung out together for years, right? And it's actually one of the reasons that so many people believe events recorded in the Gospels are true, right? John was an eyewitness writing what he saw. And in chapter 10 of his book, John records a moment where Jesus says something so amazing that I think has the potential to change how you and I see every decision about our lives. You see, John writes that Jesus is talking to a group of Pharisees who were essentially not Jesus' biggest fans. And so as he spoke, he used stories of everyday things like sheep and farming to describe why he was there and what he was really like. Now I get that sheep and farming may not be every day for us, but these were ancient times where most people saw sheep or shepherds on an everyday basis. So Jesus uses a few illustrations about sheep and robbers and gates that they struggle to understand. And so finally, Jesus spells it out for them. And he says this in John chapter 10, verse 10. It says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." And so if this sounds confusing, I get it. You're not alone. In fact, a few verses earlier, John tells us that the religious leaders were actually confused too. But did you catch the last word? Jesus says full. In the original Greek language, that word gets used to talk about things that are superior, better than expected, or beyond, over the top. And so in other words, John says, Jesus wants us to have life, but not just any life. He wants us to have more life, a better life, right? It's his goal for us in everything, in life, relationships, and even sex. Jesus wants us to experience full life. And what's wild is so many of us think that this is the opposite of what Jesus wants for us. It's tempting to think that. It's tempting to think that God's goal for us in life is life minus all the good stuff. Right? Life, but only the boring kind. Or life, but without anything exciting or enjoyable. And so Jesus is telling this crowd of followers, and he's telling us that we couldn't be farther from the truth. Right? He's basically saying that I'm not a thief like the devil is. I didn't come to steal, to kill, or destroy your life. That's not me. Right? I came to make your life better and fuller than you have imagined. The word Jesus uses for thief here can be understood to mean a trickster. Think about like a con artist, right? Someone who makes you think that they care about your best interest, but they actually have a different motive. And so basically, Jesus is saying that there are people who will make you think they're for you, but they actually aren't. But as for him, he actually is for you, right? He's looking out for you so you can have the full, amazing life that he wants for you. And honestly, that's why I think when it comes to your life, the people you date, the decisions you make in your private life, there is no better decision you can make than to trust Jesus and follow his lead. Everybody else around you will have an idea, an opinion, or an expectation of what we should do or what we could do. But Jesus knows you. He doesn't just care about this one moment in your life or this one decision or this one relationship. Jesus cares about your whole life being better and fuller than you can imagine right now. And so out of all the voices, his is the one that will lead you toward that life because Jesus wants more for your story. But here's the thing. This isn't something that just happens. Right? We can't just say, well, yeah, I want a full life, right? Okay, so Jesus, please help me to get to that life around the time that I turn so I'm 26. So around the time that I turn 35, it'd be great to have a full life at that point. The truth is, right, that Jesus doesn't want more life or more for your story later in life. He wants more for you now. And living that kind of life means trusting him and following him and listening to him now, no matter what everyone else is saying. And so while we may feel pressured to, by friends or culture to think a certain way about sex or believe a certain way when it comes to sex, you don't have to wonder about who has your best interests in mind or who's looking out for you. Jesus is inviting us to a full life, even when it comes to the subject of sex. Why is that? Because Jesus wants more for your story. So you might be asking, well, what does this mean? Here's what it means. It means that when you're getting messages from all sorts of sides and feeling pressure from every person in your life, you can believe Jesus. When we're not sure who we can trust Jesus because he wants more for our story. And so to begin living a full life that Jesus promises, here's a tip. Pay attention to the messages you're hearing and believing, including messages about sex. Because even though people people send you different messages about sex, it doesn't mean those people are for you just because they're sending those messages, right? And so pay attention to what it is you're hearing. Pay attention to what you think, you feel, and say when it comes to sex, and where those ideas come from. Or pay attention to what you do and say around different people and why. Be aware of who's pressuring you and why you feel pressure from them. Be aware of how you may be pressuring others and what makes you want to pressure them. And then pay attention to what Jesus is saying to you. You see, a few verses after Jesus says that he wants us to have life to the full, he refers to himself as the Good Shepherd, right? So he says this in John chapter 10, verse 27. He says, "My sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me." And so remember that sheep and shepherds were a common thing back then, but you get the idea. It's a metaphor, right? The people who belong to Jesus listen to his voice. They follow him because he knows them better than anybody, and he can be trusted. They don't follow him because they're afraid of him. They follow because being close to Jesus is the safest place to be. And the same is true for you and me. And so ultimately, the best decision that you can make for yourself is to listen to his voice and to follow him. That's true for every part of your life, including the decisions that we make about sex. And maybe for you, that means it's time to start, reading his word more. For yourself. Maybe that means spending time talking to him by yourself. Maybe it means when a lot of voices say different things are best for you, you make sure that his voice is the one that you're listening to, because he wants more for your story than internet sites, than dating partners, your friends, or maybe even than you do. And so listen, I realize figuring out exactly what following Jesus looks like for your specific dating life, your specific decisions, can be tricky. And that's actually one of the reasons we have life group leaders, right? And life groups. We want you to have a place to talk about what's going on in your life and in your situations. And so when you're not sure what it looks like to follow Jesus in this area or any other area of life, the goal is that we have people that we can go to who will help us figure it out. And to be honest with you, the truth is this, that sex is complicated. And like we've been talking about the past couple weeks, when it comes to sex, part of what makes it so complicated is that we often only hear part of the story. We only hear one side. We only hear certain conversations. And there's always more to the story. And that's why, whether the voices around you say you should be, doing more or less, I want you to know that you can trust what Jesus says more than all of them. Jesus wants more for your story.